Imagine for a second that you are the CEO of a massive real estate empire. You have spent your entire life buying and selling dreams. You have built skyscrapers that pierce the clouds of New York. You own golf courses in the rugged highlands of Scotland. You have towers in Panama and hotels in Las Vegas. You have bought everything there is to buy. Houses, hotels, airlines, and even a football team. You have conquered the vertical world. But now, you are bored. You want something bigger, something horizontal, something historic, something that doesn't just make you rich, but makes you a legend. So, you look at a map of the world. Your eyes drift north, past the familiar borders of the United States, past Canada, all the way to the very top of the planet. Why? You see a massive island sitting right on the roof of the world. It is covered in ice, inhabited mostly by polar bears, and technically belongs to a tiny Scandinavian country that you have never even visited. It sits there, white and empty, looking like the ultimate distressed asset. What do you do? If you are Donald Trump, you do not just book a vacation to admire the fjords. You do not send a polite inquiry letter. You pull out your checkbook and you try to buy the country. Welcome to the strangest real estate deal of the 21st century. Today we are going to dissect why the President of the United States is obsessed with Greenland. We are going to look at the untold trillions in resources hiding under the ice, the military chessboard of the Arctic, and the geopolitical nightmare that makes this frozen rock the most dangerous piece of land on Earth. This is not just about buying an island. It is about the future of global power. It is about who controls the next century. Buckle up. It is going to be a bumpy, freezing ride. 1. The island that runs on an allowance. To understand why Trump wants this place, you first have to understand what it actually is. And the best way to describe Greenland is as a teenager with a very rich dad who pays the rent. Greenland is the largest island in the world. It is massive. If you overlaid it on a map of Europe, it would stretch from London all the way to Istanbul. It has more land than Mexico, France, and Spain combined. It is a continent of ice, just sitting there. But the population? There are only about 56,000 people living there. That is roughly the size of a mid-sized American town. If you gathered everyone in Greenland into one stadium, they would not even fill a college football arena. The vast majority of this massive landmass is empty. It is just rock and ice. And here is the economic reality check. Greenland is expensive, very expensive. Because of its extreme isolation and freezing climate, everything has to be imported. A gallon of milk costs more than a gallon of gas. A simple avocado can cost an arm and a leg. The cost of living is brutal. So, how does Greenland survive? They have a sugar daddy, Denmark. Since Greenland gained autonomy in 1979, they have run their own domestic affairs. They can vote for their own parliament. They decide on fishing quotas and education. But Denmark still handles the big stuff: foreign policy, defense, and crucially the checkbook. Every single year, Denmark sends a block grant to Greenland. It is about $500 million annually. This subsidy covers roughly 2/3 of the Greenlandic government's budget. Without Danish money, the Greenlandic economy would collapse in a week. They do not have the tax base to pay for their own hospitals or schools. They are sitting on a potential goldmine of wealth, but right now they are dependent on an allowance from Copenhagen. And if you are a businessman like Trump, you look at that and you see leverage. You see a territory that is technically sovereign but financially fragile. You see a distressed asset waiting to be flipped. This dependency is a hangover from history. For centuries, Denmark treated Greenland as a colony. It was a source of ice and minerals, but the people were largely ignored. It was not until World War II that Greenland became strategically vital. Denmark was occupied by the Nazis, so the United States stepped in to protect Greenland to stop the Germans from using it as a base. After the war, Greenland demanded a change. They did not want to be a colony anymore. They wanted respect. They got the Home Rule Act in 1979 and the Self-Government Act in 2009. These laws gave Greenland the right to independence. Yes, they can vote to leave Denmark whenever they want. There is just one catch: the economy. If they declare independence, the Danish money stops. And without the Danish subsidy, the Greenlandic standard of living would crash overnight. It is a golden handcuff. They are free to leave, but they cannot afford to pay the rent. So they stay in a weird limbo, independent in name, dependent in reality. 2. The geography of emptiness. Let us zoom in on the map again. Because the geography dictates the politics here. Greenland is physically disconnected from the rest of North America. It sits in the North Atlantic, separated from Canada by the narrow Baffin Bay. It is closer to New York than it is to Copenhagen, but culturally and politically, it looks to Europe. The island is dominated by the Greenland ice sheet. This is not just a few glaciers. It is a massive body of ice covering 1.7 million square kilometers. It is so heavy that it has actually pushed the center of the island down below sea level, creating a bowl shape around the edges. Most of the 56,000 inhabitants live along the coastline, in settlements that are often cut off from each other for months during the winter when the sea freezes. The capital, Nuuk, is a small city of colorful houses clinging to the rocks. It looks like a postcard from a fantasy novel, not a modern geopolitical hotspot. But looks are deceiving. This coastline is thousands of miles long, and every mile of it is becoming critical. The isolation creates a unique economy. It is not based on manufacturing. You cannot easily export cars or widgets from Greenland. The economy is based on extraction, fishing, mostly shrimp and halibut, and tourism, mostly from cruise ships stopping to see the icebergs. But these industries are seasonal and vulnerable. They cannot support a sovereign state with the infrastructure requirements of the 21st century. They need roads, they need airports, they need deep water ports, and they need someone to pay for it. For now, that someone is Denmark. 3. The colonial shadow. You cannot understand the current situation without understanding the history of abuse. The relationship between Denmark and Greenland has never been equal. For hundreds of years, Denmark saw Greenland as a resource to be exploited, not a people to be respected. The Danish crown established a trade monopoly in the 18th century that effectively strangled any local economic development. They controlled the trade of seal skins and whale oil. They decided the prices. In the 1950s, things got even darker. In an attempt to modernize the Inuit population, the Danish government relocated families from their traditional hunting grounds to concrete housing blocks in the capital. They moved them away from their dogs and their boats, trying to turn nomadic hunters into urban wage workers. It was a cultural shock that caused immense suffering and social problems that are still felt today. Alcoholism and suicide rates remain high in Greenland, a lingering scar of this forced assimilation. This history makes the current political tension very sensitive. When Trump talks about buying Greenland, he is accidentally stepping on a landmine of colonial trauma. The Greenlandic people remember when they were treated as property. They are not about to let it happen again, not to an American businessman. The Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, knows this history. When she called Trump's idea absurd in 2019, she was not just insulting a president. She was defending the sovereignty of a people who have fought hard to get it. 4. The shift of power. But let us be honest. History is one thing, and survival is another. In the 1950s, while Denmark was trying to assimilate the Inuit, another reality emerged: the Cold War. Suddenly, the isolation of Greenland became its greatest asset. During World War II, the United States built bases in Greenland to secure air routes to Europe and to stop Nazi weather stations. After the war, the Americans wanted to leave, but the Danes realized that holding on to Greenland meant staying relevant in NATO. The most famous base is Thule, now called Pitufik. It sits at the far north, a lonely outpost of radar dishes and landing strips. It became the eyes of the West. It was built to watch for Soviet bombers coming over the pole. It is the closest point in North America to the Soviet Union. It is not an exaggeration to say that for 40 years, Thule was the front line of human civilization. It was the canary in the coal mine for nuclear Armageddon. And this is where the Trump obsession makes logical sense. It is not about real estate. It is about Thule. It is about the radar. It is about the fact that as the ice melts, Thule is no longer just a radar station. It is becoming a gateway to a new ocean. So, we have a frozen giant that is broke, dependent, and sitting on the front porch of the most valuable real estate on the planet. It is a teenager waiting to inherit the house, but stuck in a room with a lock on the door. And the world outside is changing fast. The ice is cracking, the seas are rising, and the sharks are circling. Russia is pushing from the east. China is coming from the south. And the United States owns the lock on the door. In the next part, we will dive into the specific reasons why the ice melting is making Greenland the most valuable place on Earth. We will look at the rare earth minerals that are essential for your iPhone and electric car, and we will analyze the military nightmare that is the new Arctic race. Do not go anywhere because this story is just getting started. 5. The Great Thaw. We left off with the sharks circling the island. But why are the sharks circling now? Why is the world suddenly obsessed with this frozen rock? The answer is simple, and it is terrifying. The ice is dying. We have spent decades hearing about climate change as an environmental disaster for polar bears. We have seen the photos of stranded bears and melting glaciers. But in the cold, hard world of geopolitics, melting ice is not a tragedy. It is an opportunity. For centuries, the Arctic was a fortress. It was locked in a cage of ice that was miles thick. It was impassable for ships. If you wanted to trade between Asia and Europe, you had to go all the way south to the Suez Canal or all the way through the Panama Canal. It was a long, expensive trip. But the planet is heating up. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world, and that ice is retreating at a shocking rate. What is replacing the ice? Open water. Dark, navigable water. This changes the entire map of global trade. New shipping lanes are opening up that we have not seen since the Vikings sailed these seas. The Northern Sea Route, above Russia, and the Northwest Passage above Canada are becoming viable. Think about the implications. If you are a shipping company in China, and you can sail your goods to Europe over the top of Russia, you cut thousands of miles off the trip. You save millions of dollars in fuel. You avoid the pirates of the Red Sea. You avoid the choke points of the Strait of Hormuz or the Suez Canal, where a single blocked ship can halt the global economy. The Arctic is becoming the new Mediterranean. It is a shortcut that reshapes the global economy. And who owns the coastline of this new ocean? Greenland. By controlling Greenland, you do not just own ice. You control the gateway. You control the driveway. You control who gets to sail through, and you control the resources underneath. But the resources are where the real money is. 6. The treasure under the ice. For decades, geologists have been dreaming about what lies beneath the Greenland ice sheet. It is estimated that Greenland holds enough untapped mineral wealth to make the entire country rich beyond their wildest dreams. We are talking about zinc, copper, iron, and gold. There are veins of wealth running through that rock that could transform the economy overnight. But the big prize? The thing that keeps generals in Washington awake at night? Rare earth elements. This is the buzzword you need to understand. Rare earth elements are the oil of the 21st century. They are not actually rare, but they are incredibly difficult to process, and they are essential for everything that defines our modern life. Your smartphone, the magnets in a wind turbine, the battery in your electric car, the precision guidance system in a missile. You cannot have a modern economy without them. And right now, China has a chokehold on the market. They control the vast majority of the global supply. They decide who gets the minerals and who does not. If China gets angry, the rest of the world cannot build electric cars. The United States is terrified of this vulnerability. They are desperate to find alternative sources of rare earths outside of Chinese control. They are looking everywhere. Africa, Australia, South America. And guess what? Greenland is sitting on one of the largest deposits of uranium and rare earth elements on the planet. There is a specific project called Kvanefjeld. It was estimated to contain enough rare earths to supply a quarter of the world's demand for decades. It is a mountain of money sitting in the snow. But there was a problem. The local Greenlanders said no. In a wave of green politics and environmental concern, they elected a government that banned uranium mining. They looked at the money, and they looked at the radioactive waste, and they chose the environment. This is the central conflict. The Greenlandic people want to protect their pristine land. They do not want their island turned into a giant toxic mine to feed the factories of the world. But the global economy wants the resources. The demand is insatiable. And this brings us back to Trump. Trump looks at Greenland and sees a massive mistake. He sees an island that is choosing green politics over economic gold. He sees a strategic resource base being locked away by a small democratic government that is struggling to pay its own bills. In his mind, if the United States buys Greenland, the environmental regulations change. The mining starts. The rare earths flow to American factories. The United States secures the minerals needed to beat China in the tech war. It is a resource grab disguised as a real estate deal. It is not about the scenery. It is about the supply chain of the future. 7. The strategic heartbeat. But wait, it gets even darker. If you think the resources are important, wait until you hear about the military value. Deep in the northern part of Greenland sits a place called Pituffik Space Base. You might know it by its old name, Thule Air Base. It is the northernmost military installation in the United States, and it is arguably the most important piece of real estate in the entire NATO alliance. Located on the edge of the Arctic, Thule is in the perfect position to act as a tripwire. It is a ballistic missile early warning system. The physics of the Earth dictate that the shortest path for a nuclear missile launched from Russia towards the United States is not across the Atlantic. It is over the North Pole. A missile flies over the Arctic, and it comes down over Canada. The radar at Thule is designed to detect those incoming missiles the moment they are launched. It gives the US president minutes, literally minutes, to decide whether to launch a counterattack. Without Thule, America is blind in the north. It is a gap in the shield that could be fatal. During the Cold War, this was the front line. It was the edge of the known world, and it still is. But now, the threats are different. It is not just Russian missiles anymore. It is Russian submarines navigating silently under the ice. It is Chinese research vessels mapping the Arctic seabed, looking for places to hide their own submarines. Moreover, Thule is now a space monitoring station. It tracks satellites. It monitors debris. It is critical for the new era of space warfare. As nations race to put weapons in orbit, having a base in the Arctic that can track and potentially disrupt those satellites is a game changer. If China were to gain influence in Greenland, if they were to be allowed to build a port or a dual-use facility in Nuuk, the capital, US military planners would have a nervous breakdown. They would view it as an existential threat. And this is why Trump's comments about Greenland are not a joke to the Pentagon. He framed it as a national security issue. "We need Greenland for national security," he said. He was not talking about building a golf course. He was talking about preventing China from controlling the roof of the world. 8. The art of the deal versus sovereignty. Let's talk about the political spectacle that shocked the world. In 2019, it was leaked that Trump had been asking his aides with increasing obsession, "What do you think about buying Greenland?" He did not see why not. He saw Denmark as a struggling European ally and Greenland as a distressed asset. He planned a state visit to Denmark. He thought it was going to be a meeting of friends. But then the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, did something you do not do to a businessman. She said, "Greenland is not for sale." She called the idea absurd. She cancelled the meeting. Trump lost his mind. He tweeted that the Prime Minister was nasty. He called her comments inappropriate. He cancelled the trip. It was a diplomatic disaster. Now fast forward to 2025. Trump is running for president again, and he is doubling down. He has not just asked to buy it. He has refused to rule out using military or economic force to take it. He said, "We need Greenland for national security." People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. This is terrifying language. For a post-World War II order based on respecting borders and sovereignty, this is madness. The Danish government was furious. They called it a violation of international law. But here is the brutal truth. In geopolitics, might makes right. The United States is not the only country eyeing Greenland. Russia is militarizing the Arctic at a breakneck pace, reopening Soviet era bases and building new icebreakers. China is investing heavily in mining projects across the region, calling itself a near-Arctic state. The European Union is scrambling to fund projects in Greenland just to keep them in the Western sphere of influence. Everyone wants a piece of the pie. The competition is heating up along with the temperature. 9. The tightrope. This leaves Greenland's leaders stuck in the middle of a nightmare. They want independence. They are ethnically and culturally distinct from Denmark. They are Inuit, not Danish. They have their own language. They want to rule themselves. But they do not want to become a pawn in a new Cold War between Washington and Beijing. They are walking a tightrope. On one side, there is the promise of independence fueled by American money or Chinese investment. They could become a superpower in their own right. They could pay their own bills. They could build their own hospitals. On the other side, there is the preservation of their environment and their lifestyle. Do they want to turn their home into a mine? Do they want to become a military base for the Americans? They look at history. They remember the Danish attempts to assimilate them. They remember the forced relocations of the 1950s. They are skeptical of outsiders coming in with grand plans. But they also know that without Danish money, they are broke. They need a new partner. They just do not want that partner to own them. It is the ultimate struggle for a small nation. How to keep your soul when the giants are fighting for your body. 10. The moral of the story. So, where does this story end? Will the United States buy Greenland? Probably not. The political fallout would be catastrophic. NATO would fracture. The idea of buying territory in the 21st century feels like colonialism, and the world will not stand for it. The international community would turn against Washington instantly. It is too messy, too ugly. But that does not mean the U.S. will not control it. What we are seeing is the beginning of the great Arctic race. The ice is melting, revealing resources worth trillions. The world is heating up, and the competition for the top of the world is heating up with it. Trump's bluster about buying Greenland was a mistake, but it was an honest mistake. He was saying the quiet part out loud. He was admitting what every geopolitical analyst knows in secret. Greenland is the most valuable piece of land on Earth that nobody is using. It is the key to the next century. The scramble has already begun. It is just not happening in real estate offices. It is happening in mining licenses. It is happening in port contracts. It is happening in military grants. If the 20th century was the era of oil in the Middle East, the 21st century will be the era of resources in the Arctic. And whoever controls the Arctic controls the future. Greenland does not want to be bought. It does not want to be a colony again. It wants to be free. But in the Game of Thrones that is global economics, what the little guy wants rarely matters when the giants start to fight. The ice is gone, the game is on, and the fate of the world is sitting right there, under the ice. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the frozen north. If you enjoyed the video and learned something new about the real reasons behind the headlines, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and helps us make more content like this. I will see you in the next.